Now we want to bring you an interview we did a while back with an extraordinary talent, Nile Rodgers. For more than 40 years, he's written, produced, and arranged some of the biggest selling songs of all time, recorded by some of the biggest names in the music business. Diana Ross, David Bowie, Daft Punk, to name a few. He's never without his guitar, and his sound is unmistakable. Tonight, his remarkable story.
1, 2, aww.
The music, unmistakable, just like the man playing the guitar, Nile Rodgers, a superstar for decades and Grammy winner for the 2014 Album of the Year for songs like Get Lucky.
She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky. We're up all night to the sun.
He wrote his first major hit more than 35 years ago at the height of disco, Le Freak. Rodgers and his band Chic defined the era with blockbusters like Good Times and Everybody Dance. After Chic's success, Rodgers became a producer, catapulting Sister Sledge to stardom with the smash hit We Are Family.
We are family.
Soon, legends came calling, like Diana Ross. Thanks to Rodgers, Diana became her biggest-selling album with hits like I'm Coming Out and Upside Down. When David Bowie approached Rodgers with a folk song, Rodgers turned it into the best-selling song of Bowie's career, Let's Dance. Then came Madonna. The Material Girl provided Rodgers with his own biggest commercial success when he produced Like a Virgin. With sales of more than 20 million copies, it's one of the best-selling albums of all time. The song became her first #1 hit in the U.S. and stayed there for 6 weeks. We sat down with Rodgers at Electric Lady Studios in New York, where he recorded some of his greatest hits.
So, Nile Rodgers, welcome. It's great to have you on our program.
Thank
and
you.
Great to be with you. What's it like to be in this building?
For me, this is incredible history. Electric Lady is where I recorded my very first hit record, Chic. In 1977, our first Chic single was called Dance, 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 Yowza, Yowza, Yowza. And I think we were a top 5 pop single. And we sold 1 million singles on 2 different labels, believe it or not.
From Le Freak to Get Lucky. I mean,
Yeah,
this spans
yeah.
this building spans your career, right?
Yeah, I've done, man, what have I done here? And almost every record was #1. So I've done Hall & Notes here. I did In Excess, Original Sin here. I did Get Lucky here with Daft Punk. I've done a lot of stuff.
You had such sweet success at a young age in your career, and then at this date in your career, such sweet success. Is it better the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th time around?
It's hard to say that it's better, but it's pretty damn good. It's pretty good. A lot of things have happened. A little over 3 years ago, I was stricken with very, very, very aggressive cancer, and they were thinking that my future wasn't looking so rosy. And when I was told to get my affairs in order, it wasn't quite that dramatic, but it was something like that. I thought that what that meant to me was, well, I'm going to do as much music as I can. So I started doing more concerts than I've ever done. I started writing more songs, making more records. And Get Lucky with Daft Punk was probably the first of that crop of records to come out. And then Adam Lambert and Avicii and, a bunch of modern pop records that have all done very, very well.
Did Daft Punk ask you, how did they get in touch with you and say, hey, we want you involved?
Yes.
Is that what it was? They just called you up on the phone and said,
hey. Then when they came to New York City, they called me up, and I happened to be home. And it was really just like that. I just happened to be home, answered the phone. They said they were in New York working on a record. They were working here. I invited them up to my apartment. they played the riff of what would later become Get Lucky. At that time, it wasn't called Get Lucky. It was actually a part of another song.
She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some.
And that went so well, they said, well, let's do another one. And I did a second one, and they said, let's do another one. And I did a third one, and they said, let's do another one. I said, guys, I got work to do. I was really just in town for a day or so. So we did 3 songs, and, now Random Access Memories is an amazing project for me.
And Rodgers has done a lot of amazing projects over the past 35 years. His first mega hit was during the disco era.
Let me take you back a few years and talk about Le Freak. You really are disco in many ways. You are. And when you think disco, you think Studio 54. So Le Freak, tell us the story about Le Freak and Studio 54.
Well, one night, and the night happened to be New Year's Eve, 1977 going into 78. We were invited down to, when I say we, I mean my former partner, Bernard Edwards. He and I were the co-founders of my band, Chic. We were invited by Grace Jones because she was considering us for what would have then been her next album. And this was a huge honor for us because we only had one big record and another sort of small record, but it was pretty important in the disco scene. So for us to be invited personally by Grace Jones to see her perform at Studio 54 was incredible. Well, we had never met her in the flesh. We had only spoken to her on the phone. And Grace has this very, very affected accent, sort of a cross between Marlene Dietrich and Bela Lugosi and Bob Marley. It's this very, 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 it's
well
completely,
described.
It's very original. No one in the world sounds like Grace Jones. And she told us to knock on the door, to knock on the back door and tell them that we were personal friends of Miss Grace Jones. So we knocked on the back door and we said, hey, we're personal friends of Miss Grace Jones. And the guy slams the door in our faces and basically tells us, in fact, he tells us to F off. And we were perplexed. We said, no. And we try the accent again. No, we're personal friends of Miss Grace, whatever. And at that point, we knew that we weren't going to get into Studio 54 that night. So we went around the corner to my apartment, which just happened to be 1 block away. And we bought a couple of bottles of Dom Perignon, which we used to call rock and roll mouthwash in those days. And we downed those 2 bottles, and I started jamming. I started playing this little groove. And we were going. Aw, F off. F Studio 54. F off. Aw, F off. F Studio 50. And we loved it. It sounded great. We were getting into it. We wrote this bridge, and we were talking about, if a cab driver cuts you off, boom, boom, F off. And we were, and after jamming on that for a bit, my partner looks at me and he says, my man, you know this is happening. And I was like, Bernard, we can't get this on the radio. How are we gonna, it just doesn't work. So me being the hippie that I am, I said, oh man, why don't we call it Freak Out? And he looked at me and went, what? I said, yeah, like when you drop acid, man, and you like freak out, he's looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, oh, right. And then Bernard said in a moment of genius, which he had many moments like that, he said, yeah, and my kids are doing that new dance called The Freak. Hello. So we made a song up about these beautiful people in Studio 54 doing this dance called The Freak, which we called Le Freak to make it chic and French and make it ours.
You knew it was going to be a hit?
We knew it was a monster hit. Le Freak is the largest selling single in the history of Atlantic Records, and no record, I don't believe, will ever touch it. We sold 6 million singles in America alone, and we cut it off because we were afraid that it would cut into our album sales.
But with Le Freak came the backlash and the birth of the anti-disco movement.
When disco began to die, what happened to you, and how did Diana Ross change things?
After the summer of '79, even though we had a string of #1 records and big ones, like I said, Le Freak is the biggest selling single in Atlantic history, people weren't even answering our calls any longer. And thank God that we had inked the deal with Diana Ross before the whole Disco Sucks thing blew up, because things were pretty bad. I mean, we really couldn't get arrested. And Diana Ross gave us the opportunity to write records and songs that were a lot more sophisticated, harmonically, orchestrally. We could do things that were a little bit more clever and more sophisticated. We used polysyllabic words like instinctively and all that. You know, we would never put that in a Chic record or Sister Sledge.
I said upside down, you turn me, you're giving love instinctively.
Diana Ross was the very first superstar that we were working with, and we wanted to prove ourselves on a higher level. We turned the record in, they hated it.
And the record was?
Diana, which wound up being the biggest record of her life. We sold 6 million.
Did you know at the time that I'm Coming Out would turn into a gay anthem?
Of course we did.
You did, absolutely.
I got the idea, the way that I got the idea to write the song I'm Coming Out was back in those days we used to do what we call club hopping. And New York was just the hottest place in the world for disco. We had the best clubs. We had Studio 54, we had Area, we had all these cool joints. So I went to this one club, it was a transvestite club called the Gilded Grape. I walked into the bathroom and I thought, this is the weirdest thing in the world. Like, I'm standing in the bathroom with a room full of Diana Ross impersonators. What I took away from that was, oh my God, the gay community loves Diana Ross. So I saw this and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if Diana Ross recognized the gay community's love for her in a song? So we took that war cry, which was I'm Coming Out, which was really powerful in those days. And then a couple of days later, I worked it out and wrote. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show.
Nile Rodgers. He's playing to honor his late friend David Bowie at this year's Grammy Awards. That's our program. Thanks for watching. I'm John Siegenthaler. Allie's next.